Joining me today, the current reigning, defending NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Scrap Iron Adam Pearce. Not every day I get to talk to royalty.
Hey, how are you, Brian? Good. Thanks for having me on again, man.
Absolutely, anytime. So keep him very busy in your life these days. I think one of the things we need to go back to talk about, first of all, is, at this point in your career, did you think, even going back, say, a year from now, did you think you'd be in wrestling, much less be the World Heavyweight Champion again?
You know what? That's a tough one, and yeah, you're right. It's been pretty much dead on a year. February 12th of 2011 is the day that I suffered, which turned out to be probably the toughest injury I've ever had to deal with. Crushed nerve bundle on my right side and a severely sprained neck. And yeah, man, a year ago today, I had no idea what the future held. I was more worried about trying to get the feeling back in my right arm. So to see where I've come in 365 plus days and just physically, emotionally, my schedule's crazy. I couldn't have asked for a better scenario.
How is your arm right now? How is that injury?
I'm completely healed. My neck is fine. Again, it was severely sprained. They thought there was a break in there, which we talked about last time. Thankfully, there wasn't. The nerve bundle is pretty much back to where I was. I'm always going to have some lingering nerve damage. I have some numbness. It's very, very dull. They told me to expect to probably have that for as long as I'm around. So if I was going to put a number on it, I would say I'm 97% the man I once was.
Mm-mm. Now, at the time when that injury happened and there was so much uncertainty, was it tough for you to kind of come to terms saying this might be it?
I thought immediately it was it. Laying in the ring, not being able to feel my arm, I was going through that gamut of emotion. Can I feel my legs? Trying to ascertain just exactly where I stood physically in that immediacy. I thought that's it, and not until I had the CT scan and the X-rays and dealt with my physical therapy and everything that came after the fact did I realize, okay, this is, number one, manageable, but two, I'll recover for the most part from this and be able to continue to work should I choose to do so. But right then and there, I thought, this is it. And I think that was probably the saddest thing I went through as I've said many times, as an athlete, and obviously I played football and baseball prior to getting into wrestling, but as an athlete or someone who's involved heavily in competition of any kind, you want to go out on your own terms. And it really didn't look like I was going to be able to do that.
Well, even on that note, you talk about, you go through the CT scan, everything looks, okay, you're able to rehab, you're able to get back healthy, but did you think, what, I came close this time, maybe I need to hang it up? And did you ever still think about, my career is over, I need to end it right now?
Looking back on it, I had outside forces such as my family and friends who I think were more concerned about the physical aspect of this than I was. I've always had a good sense of how my body reacts to injury and what it is and isn't capable of. And once I was told, A, that my neck wasn't broken, and B, that the nerves that were damaged would regenerate to the point where I would feel normal, I had no doubt in my mind that I wanted to come back, if for no other reason than to see exactly how it felt again and to see exactly what I would be capable of. And that's kind of what spawned One Last Ride. Once the doctor said, okay, you're obviously wanting to do this, there's nothing we're going to tell you that's going to stop you from doing it. They just wanted to make sure I had as much information as I had to know exactly where I stood, and then allowed me to make my own, educated but obviously biased decision. There was no doubt I was coming back. I knew that I had to do it for me, if for no other reason. Like I said, just to do it.
Walk me through the return. What was it like the first time after coming off that injury that you took a bump, not only physically, but also psychologically?
It's funny. It was probably, I rarely get nervous before matches now, but I remember being as nervous about taking that first bump as I've been about wrestling in probably 10 or 12 years. It was about a month and a half, I would say, before I actually came back and had my first match. My doctors, everything looked good. The neurological tests that I was having, everything was responding the way they wanted it to in terms of my nerves firing when they should be and having feeling when I should, etc. When they told me I could, all right, go dabble and see. That first bump, it was in a training camp just north of San Diego in a city called Escondido, California. There's a training camp up here that's owned by SoCal Pro Wrestling, and from time to time they let me use the ring if I want to go in there and work on some stuff. So they had some students in there who had only been training for maybe a month or two, and I walk, and I think I was more nervous about being in the ring with them than they were being in the ring with me. And that first bump, I remember just, taking a bump like I've done, I don't even know, 100,000 times over the last 15, 16 years, and laying there. And I don't know what I was waiting for. Was I waiting? I guess I was waiting to see, A, did I feel it? B, what did it feel like? And C, was I going to be able to get up? And, check off all three of those, and here we are.
But you're not planning on hanging it up anytime soon, are you?
Like I said, when I started this kind of comeback trail and dubbed it One Last Ride, I'm in for as long as physically I'm able to do it, and I feel great right now. I'm in the best shape I've been in probably in legitimately 15 years. The schedule has been overwhelming to me, and that's a huge credit to the promoters and fans out there who I think kind of got behind me and wanted to allow me to come and kind of say thank you to all these places that I've been and places that I haven't been yet that I've been going to in the last 7 or 8 months. I never set a timetable on it. I never said, it's going to be 6 months or whatnot, but I would be surprised if I'm around much longer than 2012. But nothing definite, but that's kind of where I'm leaning right now. Yeah.
After going through that situation, do you think it will be easier for you to find peace that when you decide to hang it up that you'll actually be done?
You know what, man, I was comfortable after that first match back and being able to perform on a level that I was satisfied with, that I felt was acceptable to me, that, if that was the only match that I had coming back, I was good with it. So all of this, kind of like how I've looked at my wrestling career since the beginning, all I ever wanted to do was have one match. And I've done that, several thousand times over. And now, coming back from this injury and recovering the way I have, and really, I think elevating my performance to an entirely different level. If it ended tomorrow, I would be 100% satisfied and very content with what I've been able to do over time. And nothing against my predecessors that have come before and then have gone and then come back and gone and come back. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So I think when I go, I will graciously tip my hat and ride off into that proverbial sunset.
Because I was going to say, too, I think right now you're in the prime of your career.
Yeah, and that's kind of the difficult part, too. I mean, the last year, I would say probably since the middle of 2010 until now, has been a whirlwind of emotion, being let go from Ring of Honor, and then immediately sending out feelers to TNA and WWE and getting feedback that I didn't expect. I thought prior to being injured that I was going to be at FCW in Florida, and if it wasn't for this wonderful three-letter word, age, I think I'd be there. In fact, I planned on even moving across the country. But I'm at a point now where I feel great. I feel like I'm working better than I have in a long time. I'm surprising people who've been around me for years with what I'm doing. And just from a physical standpoint, just being in the best shape of my life, I was in the ring with Colt Cabana over the weekend. I could wrestle an hour right now without any question. And I would love to be able to do that on a bigger stage, but I just don't know how realistic that is. I mean, only time will tell, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. You bring up, you thought maybe WWE or TNA, and you just brought up the age factor. Well, you're not old by any stretch of the imagination. You're, 33?
Yeah, I'll be 34 in June.
Okay.
And I think, it's frustrating to be told, and I believe the quote was, the powers that be don't see a return on their investment long term due to your age.
But did both companies say the same thing? Did they both have age as a factor?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, both companies didn't say that, and I don't want to paint a picture that I'm embittered in any way or upset.
Right.
In fact, the people that I was dealing with made some very good and valid points, which I understand, and I had some really what I thought were good and valid rebuttals to those points. But at the end of the day, the people that I was dealing with don't ultimately make that decision, and that comes down to a couple people, and if a couple of people aren't on your side necessarily, then you're kind of left on the outside looking in. I'm just one of hundreds of guys that have been in that situation. So
I guess we need to get you on Tough Enough so you can earn your way on, right?
I think if you go back and watch Tough Enough very closely, you'd probably see me, although you probably don't think it's me.
Really?
That's all I'm going to say about that.
You got to say more about that now.
maybe off the record of over a beer one or two times.
Maybe we could do that. So, but in the meantime, I mean, like you said, you've been keeping very busy. NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and it's funny people still talk about the NWA, and you've got NWA Hollywood out there, which you're a big part of out there on the West Coast. Tell everybody about that right now, because I think one of the really cool things about NWA Hollywood is you kind of get that little bit of that more old school feel for people that kind of like that, where it's got obviously new talent and you see a lot of athleticism, but it's still kind of got that feel of the show of yesteryear a little bit.
Yeah, and that's always been by design. David Marquez, who NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is obviously his brainchild, grew up loving the type of pro wrestling that I gravitated to as a kid, 605 on Saturday on TBS type stuff. And that's precisely what the mold for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is. And just to be a part of that from its infancy until now, it's been on the air in Los Angeles, again, our country's second largest market, for about 15 months now. And last week, the overnights of the show did just over a 2.0 in Los Angeles. And that is unbelievable. And the fact that it doesn't get more coverage, it can be frustrating at times. I mean, the show is doing better numbers in Los Angeles than TNA is.
Right. And
think about that.
Because of those numbers, has there been any opportunity or possibility of expanding elsewhere outside of just that area, at least in the state of California?
Yeah, I mean, there's always talks about that. I think the thing that David Marquez wants to be careful about is going down a road that he went with a couple of years ago. In 2008, he branded the NWA Wrestling Showcase program that was on Color's TV network, which was exclusively saw on Dish Network. And while that went technically to a national audience, it didn't exactly do hot in terms of ratings. I think part of that was the channel it was on and the times and whatnot. But he doesn't want to kind of repeat some of the same mistakes. He's doing a wonderful job with our partners at KDOC TV here in Los Angeles. Everybody's happy with the numbers the show is doing. The advertisers are all on board. The crowds, I mean, it's been sold out the last 4 tapings at Glendale Studios here, and to the point now where we've started an RSVP service where people can get their tickets ahead of time. It's just growing, and there are syndication possibilities, but I think he's being cautious, maybe overly cautious, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's baby steps at this point, and I endorse that. Yeah,
and I think there is something, not only for the fans, but for the talent, there's something romantic about, say what you will about being part of a smaller company, but having the history that you do, running the company the way that it's being run, and being different, than what we see right now on TV. There's almost, I think, kind of a romantic connection between the product and the fans.
Yeah, and I think that little cult following, that intimacy you're talking about, and it really does, I think, to those hardcore fans that are showing up now, 300-400 packing into the studio every month, it feels like it's just as much their show as it is the performers. And having been a part of Ring of Honor and seeing how that kind of dynamic can really grow and how that endears you to a certain segment of the audience you're trying to appeal to, that's invaluable. And for that reason, I don't think Dave is in a hurry to try and get past that as much as he wants to kind of ingrain that within the subculture of NWA Hollywood and make sure that feel of, I don't want to use the word possession, but really making the fans feel like, hey, this is ours just as much as it is everybody else. Kind of the way ECW did that, and certainly Ring of Honor. I think that's a brilliant way to go.
When it comes to Ring of Honor, obviously you're a big part of their, behind the scenes with the show. You left back in 2010. Did you see that coming? Did you expect to leave at that time?
You know what? I mean, I think anytime you get fired, it's a shock. And certainly I was shocked when it happened, but I wasn't surprised, to say the least. So I think with some of the things that were going on with people behind the scenes, and funny enough now, neither one of the prospective combatants are working for the company.
Yeah.
I knew that at some point it was going to be me or someone else, and it just so happened it was me first. And that's okay. And again, like I've said a million times, Kerry Slip is the best boss I've ever had in any job I've ever had, and probably will be the best boss I've ever had. So, and we talk. So there's absolutely no hard feelings. I think it was one of those necessary evils.
Looking at Ring of Honor now and taking the steps that they've had to get the TV deal that they have, and and see where they are. What's your thoughts about their future going forward? Because there's still some, obviously, there's always going to be question marks, and some people say there's a little bit more pressure on them now because they do have that TV deal. You got to deliver a little bit more because you're going to be on in so many markets. And there's always a question of when you're talking about a smaller company trying to get exposure and the amount of money it takes to put on a product like that.
Well, I think number one, the good part about it is the company that bought the program, bought the promotion, is also the company that owns the television station. Mm-hmm. So there's a mutual desire to succeed on both levels. And there is obviously a lot of planning that went into the purchase. Otherwise, I don't think it would have happened. But I see Ring of Honor fitting into the Sinclair broadcasting platform in a big way and being a big part of what they're trying to do. Again, otherwise, I don't see the point in spending the money. So from the talent standpoint, they're in a much better position, I think, now because there is a level of certainty in terms of what your wage is going to be, and there's not going to be any trepidation in terms of is my check going to clear or that type of thing. And from the broadcasting side of things, I think they're kind of just getting their feet wet. I mean, again, this thing, in terms of being on Sinclair Broadcasting, is really just a baby. I mean, if I'm right, didn't it just first air this past September?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what are we, 5 months in? That's nothing. You know, I mean, I think we were really on HDNet for, I'd say it was probably, right around a year before I think everyone involved from a production standpoint, the talent, seeing how things work and how the writing crew and whatnot, I think it was about a year before we all really felt like we were firing on all cylinders. So I still think there's some time there for people to figure out from the Sinclair side especially what works, what doesn't work, what they're comfortable with, and they're finding where they can hang their hat.
My only concern would be, are they in it for the long haul? It's one thing to say, hey, this sounds like a great idea. We can go in here, we can spend X amount of money, we can get this product, that's got some followers, it's got a brand to it. But once you actually have it and are running the shows and are running the company, it can be a little bit of a different beast, and you really have to make that long-term commitment, like you said.
Yeah, and I can't, and obviously I'm not on the outside kind of looking in, although I have many friends that still work there. I can't see if I own Sinclair Broadcasting that I'm going to drop the kind of coin that's been reported that they paid for the company without a definite brand plan for the long term. I mean, I can't see them saying, hey, let me open my wallet and buy this with the responsibility of 20-some guys under contract and office staff and expectations only to hang on to it for a year. To me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I would think that they would have a definite situation on hand where they're ready to rock and roll for a while and at least see what they got before they make a decision one way or another.
When it comes to your role right now, obviously being NWA World Heavyweight Champion, but when it comes to the NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, how much of a hand do you have when it comes to the creative aspect?
100% nothing, and I love it. Love it, love it, love it.
You don't miss being the guy that kind of calls the shots?
No, and let me clarify that. I mean, again, when it comes to my own things that I'm involved in and angles and whatnot, obviously when the guys come up with ideas, they come to me and say, hey, this is what we're thinking, what do you think? And I'm very gracious that they think of me enough to ask me what I think. And there have been times when I've absolutely loved it and not changed a thing. And other times where I wasn't so hot about it and said, what if we do this? And then everybody kind of gets on the same page. But no, I don't miss having to be the one with the formats and all the talent and making sure you're doing the best to get everybody over the way that they deserve to be over and what's best for the program and whatnot. That was a headache, one that I loved, don't get me wrong, but it's nice to be a guy that puts on his tights and boots and is just one of the boys.
Did you feel more pressure leading up to a big match or leading into a big show that you were responsible for helping put together?
Interesting question, and actually I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. Probably the big show or the big event that I would have to prepare for, because I was only in control of putting pen to paper, articulating what I was trying to do from a creative standpoint, and then hoping and relying on the talent that they shared the same vision and got behind it with the same passion that I did. Big matches, I mean, I'm half the equation in there, so I'm in control of a lot more in the ring than I am on a headset. I'm at the mercy of what happens in the ring between the guys that are out there bringing to life, what I dreamt up in my imagination. So from that standpoint, and being kind of a control freak, and I can admit that, it was always, I think, a little bit little bit more hairy going into, say, a pay-per-view than it would be a match for, Scrap Iron and a Pearce.
But I think that's what you should be. If you're in a role like that, is be a control freak because, yeah, you want to see everything go well, and you have such a big part of it. Plus, you can't be the guy that's in the ring. You have to,
Right.
At some point, you have to kind of, here's what I have for an idea. Please make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. And then, some days it works great, some days, not so great, but it's a beautiful thing.
I saw you run around at those shows, man. You were expelling far more energy than you were if you were actually in the ring wrestling.
Yeah, man, I would, after a double shot weekend, particularly if one of those was a pay-per-view, my voice was usually gone. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but I'm sure it was entertaining to some people.
So how often are you working? Are you on the road every weekend right now?
Last Saturday was my first Saturday off in almost 14 weeks.
Mm.
So it's hilarious kind of when I look at it now. I'm busier now than at any point before this, including when I was working for Ring of Honor full time. I am working more now than I imagined I would. And it's been great. I've been very lucky. Been doing a lot of international stuff. As we talk here in 2 weeks, I'll be going to Australia for 10 days, which I'm excited about.
Mm-hmm.
Got another tour of Canada 2 weeks after that. I just got back from Germany. So, I mean, it's been nuts, but it's been super fulfilling.
That's what happens when you're the world heavyweight champion. You got to go all over the place.
Well, and that's kind of the mindset that I've always brought to the table when it comes to the NWA title. I really, honestly, and people can say what they want about the National Wrestling Alliance and whether or not it's as viable today as it was in the 80s, and I don't think there's a whole lot of debate there. But what I would debate is that what I'm doing with that belt specifically, what I have control over, is really no different than guys like Harley and Dusty and Jack Briscoe and Flair did in the late 70s and early 80s before cable took off. I'm taking this thing to every town I can. I was just in Des Moines for the first time with that belt in over 25 years. I'll be in St. Louis on April 6th, first time with that belt in over 20 years. I mean, I'm really, I hope when people look back and when I am done that at least I will have earned the respect of some people in the sense that I think I've done right by the NWA title and doing it the old way.
What is the reaction when you do go to countries like you find out in Australia, but Germany and Canada, when the NWA comes to town and the champion's there?
It's hilarious, and the reaction, and I'm glad in one sense, and I've said this to other people too, when my checkbook is very different when I have that championship and when I don't. What I mean by that is, for instance, in Germany, people want to see the belt. People want to see that belt. They want to be around it. They remember it. It's nostalgic. You know what I mean? And people seem to gravitate to it, and that always helps me when I'm trying to sell Polaroids or 8x10s. That's why I always take pictures with the belt in the picture, trying to create a brand awareness and obviously selfishly attaching myself to that, although the NWA's had a lot to do with that as well. It definitely means something. And again, I wish that a program like Championship Wrestling from Hollywood would take off, only from the selfish standpoint that I really feel like the demographic, the 18 to 34, that WWE and TNA is really reaching for, probably only half of that, I would say, 25 or 28 and above really even remember or know what the NWA is. And that's a huge, huge chunk of our history in this industry that a huge, huge portion of today's audience knows nothing about. And I'd love to be able to try and change that a little bit.
How difficult is it to kind of educate the audience? Because there are some people that obviously are longtime fans, but there's others that they know wrestling right now, but they don't really, there's no history to it. It's kind of like for another sport. People always talk about the NFL or the NBA, right, saying, I'm a current fan, but do you really know the history of the game and the stars of the past?
Yeah, there's always going to be your diehards, and those are the people that I thankfully have been able to kind of latch on to and to get myself booked around the country and this internationally. They understand, they know, they have some semblance of the history of our sport and where the NWA fits in with that. And the newer fans, the kids and whatnot that are actually at the event, I need to win them over live, and kind of educate them first as, there's this, dastardly heel performer or this popular babyface, whichever I happen to be portraying that night. Usually it's a heel. And then kind of work backwards. Okay, there's this Adam Pearce guy, and he was entertaining, or he scared me, or he beat my favorite, or my favorite beat him, but, who is he? And I think on the surface, once I can win a fan over, then we can kind of teach him a little bit about that. I think legacies and things like that get written long after the fact.
By the way, did you break Colt Cabana's heart?
I did break Colt Cabana's heart. In fact, I would like to continue to break Colt Cabana's heart among other parts of his body. I think, and I say that tongue-in-cheek, but not really. I think when it's all said and done, I think he will obviously, at least from my standpoint, be probably my most prolific opponent, and someone who I greatly admire as a person and as a performer, and someone who I'm always honored to share the ring with. And from now on until our last breath, as it were, as combatants in the ring, he will be someone that I honor beating the crap out of nightly.
I kind of like that beat the last breath of. You kind of got this Captain Kirk thing going between the two of you.
Oh, don't look too deep. You're going to find out where I steal all my lines from.
You're talking about upcoming events. You've got the Battle of the Belts coming up Thursday, March 29th, down in Fort Lauderdale at the National Guard Armory. Tell me a little bit about that event.
That's going to be a good one. It's the first time I'll be in Florida in probably, 18 months. Yeah. Maybe longer. And Howard Brody, promoter down there, obviously who's been around the National Wrestling Alliance for a number of years and around the business for even longer than that, brought back Ring Warriors and is now a member of the National Wrestling Alliance. And I really like that they are piggybacking on what companies like Ring of Honor and Dragon Gate USA have done in terms of WrestleMania weekend to put on an event and showcase just exactly kind of what the National Wrestling Alliance in Florida is doing. And it's a perfect opportunity to reach out to an audience that's captive for all intents. They're going to be there all weekend and they want to see wrestling, and it makes sense if you're in the area, which they are, running that building right there in Fort Lauderdale to do the same thing. So to get asked to be on the booking and to go back to Florida. To go back to Florida at any point is a good thing for me. And just on top of that, to be involved with Jimmy Cornette, and he'll be having a challenger for me from Ring of Honor. It's all poetic, and it kind of brings things full circle in a certain degree, and just excited to work with everybody involved. Now,
I know you probably can't answer this the way I want, but that show is on Thursday. There are other events that weekend, and I'm not talking about WrestleMania.
Right.
Could you see yourself staying in that neck of the woods beyond Thursday?
In a perfect world, and let's first say for the record that I have no control over any world, perfect or otherwise, but in a perfect world, that would be a wonderful thing, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
Yeah, that would be a good thing. I think we all can keep our fingers crossed and see what happens.
How important is it? You talk about the NWA and, their brand right now, but you've got Ring Warriors NWA that's really starting to get going, especially in South Florida. How important is the NWA in the state of Florida? Because, for the longest time, that was one of the hotbed areas for that promotion. And for a while now, for years, the NWA really hasn't had much of an existence in the state.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think it's humongous in terms of what the possibilities are. And I think Howard Brody's the right promoter in the right area to do something good. As you said, going back throughout the history of the National Wrestling Alliance, Florida has always been one of the catalysts for what happens throughout the country. And I think that can happen again. And hopefully, God willing, things go well with Ring Warriors, and that's exactly what happens. So I guess we'll find out. They had one event. I think it's done well. And coming back, obviously, now on the 29th of March with the Battle of the Belts, with that's an all-star card. If you look at it, I don't think they're going to have any problem filling the building. It'd be great. It would be 100% positive for the National Wrestling Alliance and for everybody involved.
Last thing, when that day does come and you decide my in-ring career is over, do you think you'll still be involved in wrestling in another capacity?
I think probably until either A, my wife says enough's enough and is ready to sign divorce papers, or I'm physically unable, I'll be involved with wrestling one way or another on some level. Whether it's just, popping in from time to time to see the boys in locker rooms or having a hand in television product or something. I can't see myself not being around wrestling in some capacity. So, I think it's a fair bet that I'll be bugging somebody.
I think you have a bright future as a commentator.
I would love that opportunity. I think that would be. I've got the gift of gab. I don't think anybody would argue against that, and I just need an opportunity, really.
That's all I'm saying, man. Give you the opportunity, you'll get it. I promise you.
Give it to me. You hear that, people? Give me the ball. I run with it.
Well, you got to retire first, though. You're not going to do it while you're the.
Do I?
Well, I think so. Maybe you could join every now and then, but you're too busy right now defending that NWA World Heavyweight Championship.
Well, yeah, it's good point. Well, you know what? There to everything there is a season.
Right. It will come in time.
You got it.
2012 better not be your last year.
I don't know, man. That's a tough one. I mean, I'd love to sit here and tell you right now that I'll wrestle until I'm 60, which is what Colt Cabana's telling me. I don't know that. Just don't know. You know what I mean? We never know, but there has to be. I'm one of these guys that anything I'm involved in, I need to see progress and things need to be moving in a certain direction, and I'm always, I think, and it's a gift of mine to kind of see when things aren't going the way they need to go, that I kind of shift gears and go a different direction. And I'm not saying that wrestling right now is doing that, because it isn't. Like I said, I'm working more now than I have in probably 15 years. But just looking ahead, you know, there has to be. I'm not at the top of the stairs. There's a couple steps above me, and if I can't find a way to take those steps, then maybe I need to be climbing a different set of stairs. That's all I'm saying.
But one of the positives is, just think of it this way: you could be beating down Colt Cabana for 2+ decades more.
Hey, you know what? One writer that I spoke with who was covering the first go round for me in Colt Cabana said that it reminded him of Harley and Dusty and their feud in the 70s, and to me that's as high a praise as there is. So I'll take it.
Fantastic. But everybody can go check out the NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Go to NWAHollywood.com. They can follow you on Twitter at ScrapDaddyAP. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it, and best of luck. And hopefully I'll be seeing you down in Fort Lauderdale at the end of March for the Battle of the Belts.
You got it. First beer's on you.
Okay.